Hi, Simone. Welcome to OCD7. Thank you so much for being here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Simone Rizkallah. I'm here based in the United States. My parents are Egyptian Armenian immigrants to the United States, and most of my career has been in Catholic education. Uh, shall I continue or shall I just go on?
Yes, please
Okay, all
do.
right.
Please do.
Most of my career has been in Catholic education, which wasn't something that I planned, but something that I think was my calling that I stepped into. Um, I got involved with the Coalition of Catholics Against Anti-Semitism back in, actually, before I got involved. I was on a trip to Israel. It was my second trip with the Philos Project at the time through the Philos Catholic Project. So the Philos Project was a nonprofit that was dedicated to positive Christian engagement in the Near East. They had a special project just for Catholics, and they invited me as a Catholic educator to come on the trip with them. And I was very happy to have any reason to go back to Israel, but also because of the profound experience with this group of Catholics. On that trip, of course, we didn't could never have predicted what would happen on 10/7, of course. And on that trip, I was invited to speak at the Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio, for a Nostra Aetate conference in October 2023. So, for those who are unfamiliar, Nostra Aetate is a document that the Catholic Church put out
Mhm.
during our last ecumenical council, the Second Ecumenical Council, on our relationship with the Jewish people and other non-Christian religions. So, at that conference, I was invited to be one of the Catholic speakers. We also had Jewish speakers. So it was a very beautiful gathering of Jewish and Catholic speakers and educators. And I agreed to speak, and I was very happy to speak. But my question when I agreed to it was, well, so this is going to be a conference on rising rates of anti-Semitism.
Mm.
This is going to be a conference on particularly an uptick in anti-Semitism in Catholic circles. And I genuinely and very naively said, this is not a problem we have in the church. This is somebody else's problem. We are certainly past this moment in our history. And the founder of, and at the time, the director of Philos Catholic said, well, I hate to break it to you, but it is a growing trend, and we want to, respond to it. I said, well, I believe you. I just never experienced
Yeah,
it in 20 years of Catholic education. Never.
yeah,
I experienced it certainly in um, Middle Eastern contexts and, but never in American Roman Catholic context. So, and there were other speakers that felt the same way. Well, the conference was scheduled late October for the anniversary of Nostra Aetate, and it was to commemorate the Pittsburgh shooting at the synagogue.
oh,
I think that was in 2018. But of course, 10/7 hits, and everybody thought we had just somehow magically organized this conference 2 weeks later, but this had been in the works for a while. So I think it was a prophetic conference. I hate to say that because of, just the devastation. And so, of course, all the Jewish and Catholic speakers who were there, all of our desire to be there, our talks, our comments, um, became even more urgent, even more necessary than we had even thought before. So that's how I eventually took over the Philos Catholic part. And now Philos Project sadly no longer exists, but the Coalition of Catholics Against Anti-Semitism is now institutionally under the Institute on Religion and Democracy, which I'm very grateful that they've given a home for the Coalition of Catholics Against Anti-Semitism. So,
And that's your project, right?
and that's
You
my
run.
project.
And what
Yeah.
do you do? Can you like just give us the outline of the project?
Yes. So back in the Fearless Project and Fearless Catholic days, it was twofold. It was combating anti-Semitism, but it's also education on the Hebraic and Jewish roots and Near Eastern roots of the Catholic faith. But as I don't have to tell everybody maybe listening to this, now there is too much work to be done kind of responding to this current crisis, to be able to do a lot of that work. So right now, what pleases me about the existence of the coalition is that again, most American Catholics are pro-Jewish and pro-Israel. So for them to see a witness of Catholics who have organized themselves to be very visible makes me very happy that there's a place, because many times I'll get emails saying, how come, are you guys the only one responding to this? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of a way to bring like-minded Catholics together who are particularly switched on to this problem and who want to create a visible witness. The other thing that pleases me about its existence is that the witness it gives to our non-Catholic Christian, um, brothers and sisters, as well as our Jewish friends, for them to see that we care and that we are doing something.
Hmm.
Um, but what is it that now we're geared towards? So strategically, what we would like is to continue to do what we had been doing for the past couple years. So when I took over, um, most of the church at that time in America really didn't know this was a problem
Hmm.
currently. And they also are not aware of our bad history in Jewish Christian relations in the Catholic Church. That was still not very well known, to be honest. Um, so the first conference that we hosted was in Washington, D.C. at the Catholic Information Center. And it was something, I had a very simple desire for that. One is to catch up everyone on
What's going
what's
on?
going on. Two, the history of anti-Judaic sentiment, theology, thought in the church for centuries.
So if you would, because we had Reverend Haley Ace here last week, and
Hmm.
in my mind, you're kind of like the American parallel to what she does in the UK. Is that okay if I say that?
Well, I don't know him, but I would like to meet him, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's her, and she maybe
Oh,
it's the
her.
long hair, maybe it's the like you're both gorgeous, but what she does is like those courses for Christians to learn about their past, like the anti-Semite past of the
Wow.
church,
That's
and
neat.
so that's very similar in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean I would be so curious to see what she's doing so we can help each other for sure.
Yeah, this is why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually put you in a group, in the
Oh,
leadership,
perfect.
in the
Oh, perfect.
Christian leadership group, and tagged her so you
Oh,
guys can find each other. But maybe we can turn it into a private conversation as well. We also had Heinz from the March of Life. He's from Germany. Do you work with him?
mm-mm.
He has the same Christian mission, but in the context of Nazi family. So
Wow.
yeah, very, very moving, very touching, very strong work. But feels kind of like the three of you is like this is the third time that I'm hearing of a Christian taking upon themselves to educate their own people about the history of how, you know,
Yeah.
antisemitism unfolded in the church. So if you had to, let's say I'm a Christian and I don't know anything about it, and you're very busy and you have like one sentence to give me about what is that history, how would you sum it up?
Yeah, I think I would definitely say, please watch the conference. We have the recordings. And I think in the Catholic Church, it's very much who do I trust that's teaching me? So I had for the first panel, one of the most popular American Catholic apologists in the United States, who happens to be of a Jewish background, saying, yes, this is a problem. The second panel was to bring very credible Catholic historians to talk about the history. Um, And I think if I had, and then the third panel was like how to respond to it pastorally, like concretely, like go make a Jewish friend. Anyways, so I would just say watch the conference. But I think if I had to sum it up in like one line, it would be that from the Christian perspective, the big thing that we would say Jews missed is that Jesus is the Messiah, right? And for Christians, the one thing that Christians have missed, again, this is from my perspective, from our perspective, they've missed the significance of Jews and Judaism in Israel. And for the Christian side, the aim is what I think the big problem is that instead of the thing in scripture that was pulled out was St. Paul calling Jews the enemies of God. And then that being the tone. Instead of pulling out other scriptures and emphasizing when St. Paul, who is a Jew and a Pharisee himself, that Jews are beloved by God. So historically, that took theological emphasis instead of the love part.
So you, like, from what we understood, because like when the war started, that was the first time that I heard the phrase that Jesus is Muslim. And I couldn't grasp it. It's like,
Oh, no,
what? What? Islam didn't exist
I've
back then. And
never,
what are we talking about? And
yeah,
then, like, even yesterday at the street, at the city where I live, there's like these teenage kids that go on a mission in couples to educate people about Jesus in the street, right? And I say, do you know that Jesus was Jewish? And they have this like, it's like they don't know it, but they know that they don't want to talk about it. There's like
yeah,
some kind
yeah,
of a form of denial. Like, guys, this is your story also. If you don't tell your story as is, someone else will tell them as they want to. So
right.
we need to tell our stories, be more present and tell our story more and make people know like basic facts, like Jerusalem existed 1,000 years before Jesus was born. What are you talking about? But Christians, like, they completely ignored the roots of where they came from. Is that
Yes.
true? It feels like it from the side.
So it is, true in one sense and not true in another. In the American Catholic context, Catholics who again are largely pro-Jewish and pro-Israel totally know that Jesus is Jewish,
Mm,
understand that the Catholic faith is rooted in Judaism, all of those things. The problem that really took us all by surprise because I had to spend time educating Catholics. This is a problem, and it's not a problem that came out of nowhere. We do have bad history. After the Second Vatican Council and the papacies of John Paul II, even very well educated Catholics maybe don't know the history. So that was also something that I thought, oh my gosh, like this is a big gap, a big intellectual gap. The problem is Gen Zers who don't know much about John Paul II and don't know much about history and don't know much about, and they're getting their education not from credible Catholic teachers or theologians. They're getting their information from
yeah,
social media.
yeah.
And so there are these very loud voices on social media that are claiming to be Catholic, but who are teaching things contrary to what the church teaches.
Yeah.
So after that initial conference, we had another conference to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Nostra Aetate at the JP2 Shrine, and that was to bring Jews and Catholics together. So to show like what friendship looks like, which should be a very normal thing. But now the next conference that we're hosting is in April next month on a college campus. And that
Mm,
conference was designed with Gen Z in mind,
mm,
with responding theologically to the kind of conversations they're having on social media
mm,
and giving them deep, robust theological education.
Mm.
because there's that fringe that's ever growing that is becoming anti-Judaic in their sentiment, which is very wrong and sinful and crazy. And then you have the majority that are normal and they feel something is off, but they don't have the education to defend it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That,
that's the goal. That's
yeah,
the
and how do we normalize? Because to be honest, as Jews and Israelis, we put a lot of trust in our Christian allies.
yeah.
Like for us, this is like we're like, okay, we're a tiny nation. There was like hardly 16 million of us all over the world, including Israel. Like we need our Christian allies. We need to see that Christians are actually, stepping up to the situation, and it's kind of like it's up to us also to come out of our shell from the like like super paranoid closed communities because
Yeah.
everyone are just like scared, but to come out and say no, it's okay, we're Jews and Christians and we can be friends, and so there's the work that we need to do, but like also like there's like huge expectation, like relying on Christians to kind of like big brother us or big sister us in your case and protect us from what's happening, to stand up and say, no, this is not true. We actually know what the truth is, and this is the truth. Jesus is Jewish. They were there
Yeah.
before, like the whole thing. So, what do you think we can do as the tiny amount of people that we are, but like super motivated about creating this alliance to actually, from our side. That
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense?
a good question because you're saying, you were saying you Jews need us Christians, but what I want is for Christians and for Catholics, because that's my corner, my Catholic Christians, is to understand that we need you and that we have a great debt of gratitude to Jews, Judaism, and Israel. And
Yeah. I mean, I actually think it's true because otherwise you don't have your story, and they could say that Jesus was Muslim, and then you're gone. Like
yeah,
the whole
and
thing
and
stands on
and,
the
and
truth.
yeah, and not and that there's real spiritual connection there. For example, one of the things that's been shocking to me, um, I grew up with Jewish friends in my youth, and I we never talked politics, we never talked about Zionism, we never talked about Israel, we just bonded because we were friends. And I know that Armenians and Jews have a lot in common with our generational trauma, but um, I thought that it was very normal for people to have Jewish friends. And to realize now that my former high school students that are Gen Zers, some of them have never even met someone who's Jewish, is very strange to me and something that needs to be remedied because you can have all the theological and political discussions, but you cannot replace the value of friendship.
Mm.
So I think that the richness that I personally have received from my Jewish friends, um,
So
with
you
no agenda except friendship, is an experience that I want young Catholics to have. You
so
know,
you're saying befriend Christians, like for us the
I
Jews,
think
like
so.
invite
Yeah,
them to Friday dinner and make them part of your club in a way.
yeah. Invite them to Shabbat. Let them,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
that is great.
yeah. I mean, I think Shabbat's so special. I think so many of our problems can be resolved with just the community aspect. And I think
Mm.
that's really the psychological, spiritual, sociological aspect of this problem we're seeing is that there's loneliness. There's an epidemic of loneliness, especially in America. It's the loneliest country in the world.
Mm.
Um, yeah, Mother Teresa said that the poorest country she's ever been to is the United States because it suffers from the poverty of loneliness.
Wow.
And so when you're finding your community and your identity and your belonging on social media, on virtual
Mm.
platforms,
Mm.
this causes this kind of tribalistic
Mm.
desire to belong to something. And then you're young, so you want to belong to something radical. And so when religious and cultural communities are not showing up for you to make a strong proposal for your life, But online, someone's very strong personality saying these really strong things, the temptation to gravitate toward that is very, it's tempting.
Mm.
So I have a very, very simple, I have many, many dreams with the coalition, but one of them is we know that the future of the American Catholic Church are kids who are going to these 20 universities in the United States. There's a lot of Catholic colleges in America, but there are 20 to 25 universities in particular where those are going to be the weekly mass goers. Those are going to be the ones getting married and having Catholic kids. And so my focus is for them to receive the education and the formation that they deserve when it comes
Amazing.
to Jews, Judaism, and Israel. And if we can not only give them that education, but introduce them to their future Jewish friends and show them real facts about what's going on, then I think we'll be in a very good place.
Amazing, amazing. First of all, I just wanted to, I love that you focus on like such a, what sounds narrow, but not narrow at all because it's systematic, right? If you succeed to get into the 2025 universities and then it's a yearly program and then everyone will just automatically go through whatever curriculum it is that you're building. So first of all, just to say amazing, such a great idea, and we would love to help you in whatever way we can. Like seriously, we work with like so many people, so everything you
I
need and
know.
want, just ask. It's really here.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my earliest memories, because I grew up in Los Angeles, was that it was the Museum of Tolerance. It was the Jewish museum that had an Armenian genocide exhibit. And I thought that was so special that, again, it was um, Lemkin, who's a Polish church, that came up with the word genocide, and that word was used to refer to the Armenians. And we also know that when Hitler was questioned, how are you going to get away with this Holocaust? He said, well, who remembers the annihilation of the Armenians? So I think we obviously have like a shared history and also a shared enemy, because the same people that hate Jews hate Christians. And when when Israel and Egypt went to war, I think this was the Yom Kippur War. Someone told my grandmother on the first day, first we'll my Armenian grandmother living in Cairo, first we'll get them, and then we'll get you, meaning first the Jews and then the Christians. So there is not only the fact that it was Jews that evangelized Armenia, but, but also that we have this hard history that was just the last century. One of the most, one of the biggest, most idealistic dreams that I have is actually to take people like your Armenian friend and the Jews that I work with that care about what happened to Armenia in 2023, because Artsakh, the Nagorno-Karabakh, was ethnically cleansed and genocided by Azerbaijan 2, 3 weeks before 10/7. So again, we have like a shared, very difficult same time frame, same season. And um, unfortunately, because of geography, geopolitical tensions, Armenia and Israel should be allies, but they aren't geopolitically, but they should be.
Yeah.
And so that's because they're each trying to fight for their own survival, which is understandable. So I think what I would love is to inspire enough um, Jews, Armenians, Christians, and so forth to start to see each other as having more in common with each other and more related to each other. And that eventually will have enough leaders in the public square that will start to
Yeah.
build that real political alliance that is grounded actually in faith and in culture. So that's like a very lofty, big dream. I just wish that
We share
more
that dream. It's not that big. We're doing it right now.
Thank you. I just wish more people knew of, the Armenians that I know that are very pro-Jewish and the Jews that I meet and the Israelis that I meet that are very pro-Armenian, and how much this like seemingly minority disposition can actually take root.
Yeah, I think so much could come from the bottom up also in this regard. Like,
Mhm.
the first time I saw Iranian and Israelis talking kindly to each other on the internet, it was I don't know, a few years ago. And look at the Argot and look at the at what the top are doing right now. Like they're basically taking us it from the people. So I believe in that a lot. Like we do a lot of things uh, top down but bottom up also here in October 7. And I believe that we could do that like we're doing with the Kurds, with the Druze, with the Iranians. So like I think Armenians should be part of this alliance that is getting built in the world right now. Not necessarily but by us, but by the pressure that we're all getting from, having this common enemy. And the Hindus, of course, I forgot the Hindus.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
We have to go to Q&A soon, but first I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that Egypt used to be Christian.
Hmm.
This is something that we know from history book, but do you want to talk a little bit about what happened to Christian in Egypt?
Sure. You know, um, during 8th century Islamic invasions, in 80 years, Egypt, North Africa, parts of Spain, were all that were all Christian, um, became Islamic territory. So in a nutshell, that's what happened. But Egypt has the largest Christian minority in the Middle East. So 10% of Egypt are largely, I mean, there are Armenians like me and others, but largely Coptic Orthodox Christians. So the largest minority of Christians is in Egypt. And yes, Egypt used to be, as most, if not all, the Middle East and parts of Spain, Christian. So I think sometimes when what's frustrating and to me is when Israel gets talked about like such an existential threat to Christians or colonizers. I just wonder if anybody has read a history book or knows anything about the history of the Middle East. So, and I'm always very inspired by my heroic female Muslim friends who are fighting anti-Semitism to the risk of their own lives here in the West and trying to make a distinction between Islamism and Muslims and the fact that they, have, for example, every woman that I, except for one that I interviewed at the International Religious Freedom Summit in, was it, was not last year, 2024. I had two Muslims and a Druze to talk about the sexual violence perpetuated against women on 10/7. And so these Muslim women have really spend their lives, um, doing advocacy for Jews, for Israel, and for this post 10/7 world that we're finding ourselves in. So they don't shy away from the problem of anti-Semitism in their Muslim communities, but they are the minority, and so they're my heroes for that.
Yeah, yeah. And it is such a big story. And on one side, on one hand, I'm glad that we're dealing with it. We have the Dina project, and we have a project that uses AI it's called AI for Good. It uses AI to create a visual for real testimonials of women that were brutalized. I don't know another word to use during all kind of attacks, not just in Israel, because the same happened to the Druze El Sueda and apparently to what you just mentioned in Armenia. But it feels like overall this entire side of the war, that this war is about women, is being kind of neglected. Like a second ago, we were all in the Me Too movement, and now
Yes, now
it's
yeah,
so much danger to women on every side of it. How can you explain this
yeah.
schizophrenia? I don't know how to call it.
Just I think. Um, ideological commitments that
Mm.
supersede reality, you know. So, I mean, but I feel like I've been having this conversation for decades. You know, if I went to a Christian college and they talked about how intolerant Christians were, and I went, really? Um, this is a Christian college, and you're talking about Christian intolerance. How is that? How does make it make sense? You know, and a lot of these people were so-called feminists, and I said, in Egypt, women are there's like forced female circumcision in some village. As a feminist, would you disagree with that? That this is happening? And they went, oh, well, that's just a different culture. And, well,
Wow.
do you really for women, or is this some sort of um,
Yeah.
political ideology that is superseding actual facts and reality? So I'm with you. 5 seconds ago, we were hashtag me tooing, but that doesn't count when it's inconvenient.
Yeah.